Greetings out there in podcast land. It's Ben and Dan coming at you live this week with another episode of Jewanced. Dan, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. A little bit strange coming off of a week where, strangely enough, I mean, pretty uneventful for this time of the year. November. What are we now? November 22nd.
I'm okay with it after the American elections and after everything COVID related.
Right.
And I'm just let's give us a week with to catch up on things.
I know it's like before we get into this, like what are we going to talk about to share during the banter parts? Like what did you do last week? Nothing. What did you do? Nothing. All right, cool. That doesn't happen. But here we are, and we got a really interesting and great one for you today. I'll let Dan do the introduction since he's a little bit more vested in it than I am. But without further ado, Dan, introduce our guest today, Saar Wilf.
Yeah, so we're super excited to have what we call serial entrepreneur, investor, and I'm going to add mega genius, maverick mega genius. I know, Saar Wilf. So over the course of Saar's career, he has founded several tech ventures going back to the 90s, most notably among them Fraud Sciences, which he sold to PayPal for a little bit of money. He has also co-founded and invested in a number of major other firms, some of which he's still involved with. Point Grab, Bzigo, I don't know how to pronounce that. Bzigo, okay. Rootclaim, which we're going to talk about today, Moon Active, and a few others that will come up. He's also funded the Brain Preservation Fund, which sounds terrifying and fascinating at the same time, and which has sparked the first technique that can completely preserve an entire human brain for long-term storage. Saar, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You missed the most important part that's not in your bio.
What's that?
It's like a semi-professional poker player.
Are you really?
Yeah, I guess so. I like that's what I like to do in my vacations. Haven't got into it for like a year now, but that was something fun to do in the old world.
Online or in person?
I don't like online. Just I usually just travel to big tournaments in Europe. Yeah, it's very exciting. Yeah, so when I wanted to relax from all the mental work, I'd go and do poker.
I have
14 hours a day.
I have a doppelganger out there in the world who also is supposedly good at professional poker. And everywhere I travel, people stop and say, "Oh my God, you look just like Dan Bilzerian."
Yeah, that's true.
Have you ever run across him in one of your poker tournaments?
No, he's only in Vegas, and I don't go there too much.
Gotcha. Awesome. So we wanted to do this in person, but COVID and everyone's being careful. I've got a little bit of the cold. Your wife's got a cold. I hope she's feeling better. And we just want to be careful that nobody COVIDs the other person.
Nobody gets the vid.
Benny, you're screwed. I can't help it. You're sitting next to me. I've sneezed at least twice on this show. So, Saar, you're doing some crazy things these days. What are you up to? I know you're involved in like 100 different companies. What's taking up most of your time these days?
So these days it's mostly around COVID, trying to see how I can help, what I can, what kind of projects I can start, what I can finance to maybe close gaps that governments and the free market are not well equipped to do. I think the most important thing is I'm funding a clinical trial on a therapeutic that is it's based on nutritional supplements. So that's an area that is very much neglected because there are no interests in promoting these kind of treatments, and there are some great stuff out there. And
what kind of treatments? What are we talking about here?
So let me go back. So basically, when you have a new virus, right, coming out to the world, what's the first thing you think to do? I mean, I think it's very obvious. Try to see what do we have that works against the most similar viruses we already know.
Right.
And this virus, it has a lot of cousins that have been running around in humans for a while. Some of them cause the common cold, which you now have. And I don't know if you have a coronavirus, but there are two types of viruses that cause common cold. You may have a coronavirus now. And
what are the two viruses that cause the common cold?
The other one is called rhinovirus.
Rhinovirus. Okay.
Rhinovirus.
Who knows?
Yeah. Right. So there's been a lot of research into common cold. There's not a lot of money in curing common cold because it's not like cancer. but it causes a lot of damage. So governments finance research into common cold and in academia, and there's a lot of information on what can work. And that's I think that's the most obvious example, because you probably heard like 100 times in your life that there's no cure for the common cold, or that if you leave it untreated, it takes 7 days, but if you treat it, it's cured in a week. So like it's a common saying that everyone knows there's no cure for the common cold, but that's completely untrue. There's like
chicken soup. We know there's a cure.
No, there's like serious stuff. There's stuff that really works.
Like what?
But there's like no connection between all the research and doctors. Doctors are not aware of the research. They don't recommend it to customers, and it's only people having to find it out by themselves. So the stuff that works on common cold is there's zinc lozenges. That's
I take a zinc every day.
So zinc, if you take zinc as a tablet, that has its advantages. That has nothing to do with the common cold. So zinc lozenges. So you need to actually have the zinc ions run around in your mouth and nasal cavities. You have vitamin D has been known to be effective in preventing colds. You have elderberry. That's a kind of it's a kind of berry that has it is effective against a few viruses. Garlic could be effective. So all of these they have clinical trials that have shown high efficacy, but very few people know about it. And there's also another problem, that is because these are unregulated treatments. So anyone can just sell what they want. So if you go now and look for zinc lozenge online, you will get around 100 products. Mm-hmm. There is only one product in the world that actually works, that actually went through the research and built the zinc lozenges in the way that the research says. All the rest, just they don't know anything.
Wait, so wait, hold on.
Are you allowed to tell us
which one?
Which one?
It's this one. I have no connection with the company. Just so you know.
I want to understand something, because I'm
life extension zinc
I'm
lozenges,
out here
yeah,
trying to figure out what I can do to try to help myself. And we can talk about how all of the governments of the world are basically talking about shutting down, go inside your house, lock down, and not like what are the things that you can do to boost your immune system, which I think is a major problem, when we're talking about preventative things and whatnot. But beyond that, a couple months, I don't know how many months ago, maybe 6 months ago, people started talking about vitamin D here and there. And I was early on that train of like, okay, I should probably start taking vitamin D. It doesn't bother myself. I got myself, I went through all kinds of blood tests. It turned out I have great vitamin D levels, but like, what the hell? I'll take vitamin D.
How much do you have?
I can't tell you offhand, but okay. I can say right now that I'm taking 4,000 to 5,000 IBUs a day, which you're going to tell me is not enough.
No, that's
is that good?
That's high, yeah.
Okay,
4,000 is the upper recommended limit.
Okay. But when it comes to zinc, I don't even remember how it happened. I think someone just threw it at me like, you should probably take zinc too. And I was like, okay, someone I trusted.
My dad's been pushing zinc for years.
But now you're telling me zinc is not zinc. Not all zincs are created equal.
Yes.
So what is, I mean, why? Why? I mean, isn't zinc?
Okay, so basically, so there is zinc that you need in your body as a general nutrient. It's good to have zinc. Awesome. There is also research that shows that zinc deficiency is associated with more severe COVID-19 outcomes. It's good to have sufficient zinc levels. But there's specifically a lot of research about zinc lozenges. That is about releasing a lot of zinc ions in the mouth. And that basically brings the zinc concentration very high in the areas where the viruses do most of the multiplying. So these are not levels you can reach by swallowing. It's only by actually having zinc directly interact in your mouth. So the problem is it's very easy to bind the zinc ions. Okay, so you take the zinc salt. The zinc when it's solid, it's a salt. You dissolve it in your mouth, and then the ions come out. The problem is these ions are very easy to reattach to other substances, and basically 99 of the 100 products out there, they all contain other substances that bind to zinc ions. So basically, they just release the ion and immediately bind it again, and then you don't feel it doesn't have any effect. And there's a reason to do it, because zinc doesn't taste good. So they try to see, okay, what can we do to make it taste better? Okay, we see this, say, citric acid. Citric acid makes it taste better, but the reason it tastes better is because you don't feel the zinc ions, and that's
why you see it coupled with vitamin C.
No, that has nothing to do. That has nothing to do with it. I think it's probably not a good idea to have vitamin C and zinc in the same product. There are also some sugars that bind to zinc. So there's only one company that did the actual work of building zinc lozenges the correct way, and they're very effective against the common cold. And there's good reason to think they will be effective against COVID-19, at least at early stages when it's still concentrated in the upper respiratory tract.
Now you're not a doctor, a medical.
No,
you're not a medical. No. You're not a biologist. You're not a chemist. You're not a biochemist or any of the medical professions, correct?
Yeah, no. What I'm good at is in analyzing data and in identifying people who are good at their job. Okay, so
how did you get into COVID, for example, or some of these other things that these public challenges that you're testing and that you're examining?
All right, so specifically for COVID, I think a lot of people try to think how can they help out. So I try to use what I'm good at, which is analyzing data, and I pretty quickly identified the people who are very good at understanding this disease. Ran into this guy called Dr. Chris Masterjohn. And he's very strong in analyzing a lot of research and understanding what's bullshit, and just giving recommendations that make good sense. So I basically took everything he found out, did some verification on my own, and basically built from that a protocol that we will be doing in the clinical trial. And he was doing a lot of coming up with very good ideas early on. So I don't know if you remember, like early in the disease, around March, there was the hydroxychloroquine craze. So he immediately said that doesn't make too much sense. He looked into the data, he looked into the trials. They were not well structured. He said this is not something that is good. And he said there's like 10 other things that make a lot of sense. We have good trials, and then we have a good rationale how they would work. This is what we should be trying. And there's a disconnect. There's no body in the world that actually takes the responsibility of, let's find out what's the best we know so far. Let's start from this. For some reason, the way it's structured is we have to start from zero. We can't use what we already know. We have to rely on drugs that have financial interests behind them.
Why do you think it is that? I mean, I'm going to say, like, cynically, I would say that it's because of money. But like, why? Here we are. The entire world's economy is basically on hold, or in various stages of hold. You would think that in such a situation that there'd be a impetus for out of the box thinking, and let's try new ideas, or at least not ban people that want to come up with new ideas and kind of push them further down the totem pole of being able to get the word out. Why is that the way it is?
It's very hard to do good analysis. Okay, so just like Chris, there's probably 1,000 people just spewing all kind of recommendations, and they look the same as him. There's no way you can tell the difference unless you go deep into the data and you see what kind of work is done behind it. So it's very hard to understand what's true and what's not. And the way it works today is that the government or the hospitals, they basically rely on the private market to put the money into the research, to take the responsibility, which is mostly fine. In many cases, it's not that bad. They have a financial interest. They will invest in research and clinical trials, and they will take the responsibility. They will be the ones making the big claims. This is the new cure. This is what works. If they're wrong, they suffer, but they also have a high upside. Okay, so they have an incentive to take the risk. But if it's just some random researcher, he doesn't have the resources to to promote it. It doesn't have the resources to take responsibility for it, and it's just very easy for everyone to just dismiss everyone. Everyone is saying this will work, this will work. You can't say who's right. We'll just have to wait for industry to provide the results in the classical way.
Do you think there's been some seriously missed opportunities? Do you think there's something that a major government or major company could have done months ago to get us to put us on the other side of this?
And to save lives.
And to save lives and save
yeah, of course. So basically, there are about 10 substances, all of them recognized as safe, all of them being used by people for decades, all of them having a good history of being effective against similar viruses, all of them, or most of them, working by biological mechanisms that are known to be used by SARS-CoV-2 as well, by this virus. It's like each one of them by themselves is probably better than 50% that they will work. There's like, what you need to do is the minute we heard about these new viruses, what you need to do is take all these 10 substances, put them into clinical trials, figure out which one is working, and within a month you have, very likely you have a cure. Sorry?
A cure?
It's not a vaccine. It's either a cure or a prophylaxis. So you either take it and you won't catch the virus, or you either take it early on after you catch it and you won't suffer too much. So
do you happen to recall them offhand? You mentioned vitamin D. Do you happen to recall some of the other ones?
Yeah. So vitamin D is the one that's has the most information now relating to its efficacy against COVID-19. Zinc has good information, has excellent information for similar viruses, but also for this virus. It has some good research. Again, zinc lozenges is probably the preferred way. So we mentioned elderberry. Elderberry is actually very interesting. Elderberry is known to be effective against a coronavirus called NL63. That's the only other coronavirus that is common in humans and binds to the ACE2 receptor. That's the same receptor used by the current virus. And we know elderberry also binds to ACE2. So we know there is a biological mechanism that is effective against a coronavirus that uses the same mechanism as this virus. Again, almost zero clinical trials in it. What else did we say? So there is coenzyme Q10. That was never known to be effective, but that was in a very interesting study done here in Israel by Clalit. So they looked into all the purchases made by people in their pharmacies, and what were the 30 days later, what were the COVID outcomes if they got infected?
Interesting.
And CoQ10 was actually the
for joint health, isn't it?
It has a lot of it's a very common molecule, and it's in our mitochondria. It's responsible for a lot of things, but they found CoQ10 to be the most effective in preventing severe COVID-19 outcomes. So that's for example another thing that could have been done very early, and just look at the data, try to, using data science tools, try to see what prevents bad COVID-19 outcomes. Again, a very, very good, strong research done by Dr. Ariel Israel, but hardly got any notice. So that's another one. Vitamin K2 also was K2 deficiency has been associated with more severe COVID outcomes. Garlic is probably effective in some ways.
Well, I'm good to know. I probably drop a clove of garlic in every dish I make.
Yeah. And a bunch of other stuff family to quercetin probably. Another good thing to take. So there are about 10 substances, 10 nutrients that are very low risk, and each one of them by themselves has a good probability of being somewhat effective.
And when we talk about somewhat effective, the outcome here would be that there would be far less serious cases or life-threatening cases of COVID, and that if you were to prophylactic, or if you were to come down with the virus, you would have a mild case of it. We're not talking about preventing the spread of the virus or eradicating the virus.
Yeah, it's basically bringing it to a seasonal flu level.
Right. But in terms of eradicating the virus, we're talking about, you would need a vaccine of some kind to, neutralize the spread of a virus. So would these therapeutics that we're talking about, would they essentially make a vaccine process irrelevant, or would this be in addition to what the world is already doing to discover a vaccine?
So if there was effective use of these nutrients, I think a vaccine would not be relevant. So because two things. One is it becomes just one of many cold or flu viruses we have around, and it's fine. The other thing is that there's a good reason to believe that many of them will also reduce the viral load, which would mean people would be less infectious. So if you manage to use them on scale and you have a big percent of the population using them, then probably you would have the reproductive factor go below 1. And if you do that for a while, then you eradicate the virus. Yeah.
Interesting. But again, I mean, here we are, and the world's not doing this. We're all like sitting around waiting for this vaccine to happen for, to get back to a semblance of normal, whatever that could be.
It's frustrating.
It's frustrating. It's very frustrating.
Yep.
Okay, so let's say
that is correct.
Here we are. We're on this path. The world is gone. The route of the vaccine. We can expect them to be out in one form or another sometime during 2021. I think that for those out there that think that the vaccine will be the end of the virus, I think that they're going to be disappointed to find out that it doesn't work that way, and it is a longer process than that. But here we are, and the vaccines are coming. Do we have should we be concerned about the vaccine?
I have no specific opinions on that, so I didn't research it well enough.
Okay.
I want to, before I want to take a giant step back and get into the platform you're using to reach all these conclusions, which is, I think, going to lead us down a whole different path. You teased on the promo that you shared for the show that you and Rootclaim, one of your companies, know with high probability, and you'll tell us what that means, where the virus came from, where the COVID-19 virus came from. I've kind of
sure. So you want
waiting to ask this.
Well, I think he has to explain Rootclaim before.
Do you want to do Rootclaim first, or do you want to get into?
I think it makes more sense to explain what Rootclaim is first, before explaining how it can reach
we dropped
the conclusion that no one else can.
People are sitting on their edge, and now we'll get into Rootclaim, and then we'll come back to
okay.
COVID-19.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so Rootclaim is an attempt to solve one of the common problems that humans have. We look at evidence, we look at information, and different people reach different conclusions based on the same information. Could be very intelligent people, they look at it, and they confidently reach different conclusions. And that basically means that the human brain has something wrong with it. It is able to reach confident conclusions where that confidence is not justified. So basically, we try to figure out why this happens. Well, it's a lot of people before us reach us why this happened, but we try to see if we can find a better solution to that. And after a lot of experimenting, we built a model and a methodology that is based in probability theory. So that is a branch of mathematics that deals with uncertainty.
So who's we? You say we?
Rootclaim. So it's this is a project that's been running for a while now. It's mostly a nonprofit company. So it's very hard to make money from just distributing truth.
It's true. It's true.
But I think it's something that's important. So
you can make a lot of money in lies.
So this is
not so much.
This is like a passion.
No. It's also in catching lies, not only in lying myself, right? So,
Rootclaim is it an Israeli organization?
Yeah.
Okay. So the premise is that human beings come into decision making or trying to understand the truth or facts with a certain amount of bias. For example, I might be let's look at the what comes to mind immediately is the polarization in the world or in the United States. So I might look at a situation like the election, and I might say, if I'm a Trump supporter, I might say there's clear examples of election fraud. There's no possible way, and anything that you tell me that's going to be, no, the election was fair and square, it's going to be, no, you would say that because you're, bleeding heart liberal, that's what you believe. And the opposite would be true as well, that if there are any cases of election fraud, which by and large there probably are, because you're talking about an election of, in a nation.
Oh, you're being way too easy on yourself. Yeah, what you should go to is Russiagate. So you had a bunch of a big bunch of the American Democrats believing that there was a huge election fraud coordinated by Russia in 2016, and that does not seem to be the case. Maybe there was some minor interference, but nothing at what was claimed to be. So you don't need to try to balance it artificially. Both sides made pretty silly claims. So yeah.
And the truth obviously is there's a truth always. The universe exists. There's truth, and there's what's happened or what will happen, and there's everything else. So Rootclaim attempts to discover or point towards the truth by not entertaining our monkey brain human biases in the decision-making problem.
Monkey brain, I love it.
Yes, exactly. So basically, if we look, there's a bunch of biases we have when we deal with uncertainty. I'll give the most simple example that some people may already know, but it's the easiest to explain. So you have an HIV test. HIV test is 99% accurate. That means that 1 in 100 cases, it will flip the result from yes to no or from no to yes. Positive, negative to negative, positive. Okay, we take a person randomly from the crowd. We administer the test. The test comes out positive. The question is, how likely is this person to be actually HIV positive? Now, people universally, if they haven't studied probability or heard this riddle before, will always say it is 99% accurate that this person has HIV, because it's a 99% accurate test. The bug here is that we don't take into consideration the prior probability that this person is HIV positive. So only 1 in 200 people, depends on the population, but let's say globally 1 in 200 people are actually HIV positive. So that means that when we take someone in random, so there is a higher probability that he is a negative that came out positive than a positive that came out positive, okay? Because a negative that came out positive is 199 out of 200, and around 2 of these will come out positive, right? 2 out of 200 will come out positive by mistake, and only 1 of those 200 will actually be positive for real. Okay, so for each true positive, we have 2 false positives. Okay, so even after the test, this person is more likely to be negative. Okay, so this is a very common bias we all have. Even after we hear it, we will constantly make this mistake. It will actually happen.
My brain is doing gymnastics to try to understand what you said right now.
Your monkey brain.
My monkey brain.
Do you want to explain it in more detail, or is it enough to just
it's okay for now.
Leave it at this. Okay. So
a few examples, and I'll have to try to wrap my head around it.
Yeah, but basically, to put it simply, if extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So if you want to make the claim that this is the 1 in 200 people that is HIV positive, a test that is 1 in 100 times wrong is not good enough. You need better evidence. That's the bottom line. And that is something that's going to happen almost to anyone in their life at some point. What they will do is they go to the doctor and they will get a test, maybe a periodic test, maybe a test for some unrelated disease, and they will get a result that they have something else, some suspicious finding that points to another disease.
Right.
That in most cases will turn out to be false, because you did not come initially suspecting this specific disease.
Interesting.
Okay, because it didn't in the prior didn't have symptoms that correlate with this disease, and just out of the thousands of possible diseases, one of them came out was an indication, that will usually be false. So so that's something that happens almost to everyone at some point. They get some, they're very scared for a week or two that they got cancer or something. And
yeah, I had that this summer. I went in for a regular chest X-ray. It was part of these tests that I was doing just to see, you know, what my levels were, and you know, I had a little anxiety or whatnot. So I said, let's get an EKG, let's do a chest X-ray. So they did that. And they came back and they said, yeah, there's a little bit of a suspicious thyroid in this area going on. Then you go home and it's like, okay, WebMD.
Yeah, you start playing Doctor.
You start playing Doctor, and it's like, okay, everything that you do is like either you have AIDS or you're gonna die, or like something is you know, awful. Obviously,
there's a Central African parasite, right?
Yeah, something. So the doctor, I'm like, doctor, what's going on? The thyroid and this. He goes, don't worry about it. I go, what do you mean, don't worry about it? It says right here on the chest X-ray result that you gave me suspicion about this and this, and I went, and it was in like this medical language, and I went online, I looked for it, and it was like, no, you this is what's going on. He's like, that's not what's going on. Bottom line is, you know, they conclusively, checked and said, no, it's that's not what it is. But yeah, you live on the edge like that for, you know, a couple of weeks because.
Yeah, and if it was different, if you were already with symptoms of related to some thyroid problem, and you would go to check your thyroid, and then they would see this exact same finding, the same evidence, that would be a much stronger indication that something is wrong. Okay, so that's one of the many bugs we have in our mind. We don't know why it happens, but we all have it. There are plenty of other stuff like that where we deal with uncertainty wrongly. So what we did is we basically mapped these mistakes, and we developed a methodology in which we take all the evidence and map it into a model, a probabilistic model, in a way that avoids these problems. We take input from people only in the areas where the human mind works, and with the areas where the human mind does not work, we use mathematical models from probability theory, which are built for that. They know how to handle uncertainty better than humans. So that's the idea.
Other biases that
sorry,
what are some of the other common biases we have?
Okay, so another one that's very important is we're very bad at estimating how a lot of weak evidence can accumulate. Okay, so let's do another quick riddle. So you have two boxes. In each of the boxes, you have.
This is the make Dan look stupid on the air show.
Oh, dude,
it's fine.
Okay, making you look boxes. Human. It's not stupid. It's all humans have this. So okay, so we have two boxes, and the boxes we have balls. And in one of the boxes, there's 2/3 red balls and 1/3 blue. The other one 2/3 blue, 1/3 red. Okay, so one is mostly red, one is mostly blue. You get one of the boxes, you don't know which one it is, and then you start pulling out balls. Okay, and just first to be completely accurate, you look at one, you put it back, you shake, and you take another one.
Yeah.
Okay, just for those that are going to catch us on the specific wording. Okay, so you sample 50 balls from the box, and then you get 30 red, 20 blue. Okay, 30 red, 20 blue, that's 60%. And now you try to estimate what is the probability that I had the mostly red box. Okay, again, humans would usually go somewhere into the 60 to 70%. Some would even say 50%. We can't know, but actually it's 99.9%. Okay, so a sample of 50 balls is strong enough that there's like zero probability that you will get 30 red if it's mostly blue. Okay. And then what you have here is 50 very small pieces of evidence. Each one is very weak. Each one is only a 2-to-1 evidence. But the 50 of them together, even though only 60% of them go in one direction, that is enough to be very confident which hypothesis is true. So that's another thing that's very strong. That's basically what makes Rootclaim reach high confidence in issues where people think it's unsolvable, it's a controversy we will never know, is these cases. So where you can actually accumulate a lot of weak evidence that none of them is a smoking gun, and you can say, okay, you're reaching a very low probability that this combination of evidence will appear under the other hypothesis.
How does evidence get inputted into Rootclaim?
So this is manually. So it's a methodology that is built in a way that's designed to make sure Nothing is, no biases are created. We don't neglect evidence. We take into account all the dependencies and all. We try to use statistics as much as possible to estimate probabilities and not use our common sense, because our common sense will sometimes be very biased on estimating the probability of some event that we haven't encountered before. So there's a methodology on how you build, how you collect all the information, how you make sure you're not biased. Everything is open, so if people find bugs, they can point them out. And then you input all these into the model, and the model gives you the final probability of each hypothesis.
Can you take us through one of your famous examples, one of the famous cases that Rootclaim has examined and reached a conclusion before we get to the
yeah,
code?
sure.
We're going to keep the teaser teasing here.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I think the one that got the most attention because it got a very counter mainstream result is Syrian chemical attacks. So this is something that is in the West. Everyone knows the Syrian government has been attacking its own population with sarin or chlorine, and there's like a lot of evidence. It's obvious. We have videos. We have recordings. We have chemical samples. We have testimonies. It all points in the same direction. But when you actually go through the evidence, check the reliability of sources, check alternative explanations for each evidence, and most importantly, you check the evidence that no one in mainstream media actually exposes to the public. You get a very clear picture that these are done by the Syrian opposition. So these are not the government. These are the opposition doing these attacks, mostly in attempt to get the West to intervene on their behalf.
So
like false flag operations.
So there is one case which you can say is very clearly a false flag. The rest could be false flag, could be just an attack of one opposition faction on another opposition faction, with the bonus of trying to pin it on the government. So
I'm looking at the website right now. I'm looking at the Rootclaim website, and there's two cases here. What caused the chemical calamity in Khan Sheikhun on April 4, 2017, and who carried out the chemical attack in Ghouta on August 21, 2013. Which one are we talking about here, or both of them?
I'm more interested in one to the right of that, which was the Miss Universe 2015 mistake intentional. But we'll go back to that later. I digress. Carry on. Sorry.
So you're asking which one of those is the false flag?
No, which one are you talking about now? Or are you talking about both of them?
Oh, both of them are all chemical attacks, as far as we can tell, are opposition.
And I think the whole world basically believed, if I recall, what the news was discussing, that it was Assad and his regime, correct?
All the world, you mean the West? Yes.
Well, yeah.
All the world, as far as we consider it.
That we consider to be
the real world.
You're not egocentric at all about
no. But I mean, for one of these, I was in the IDF. For one of them, I was not. And I'm talking based on what we were talking about in the IDF. I'm talking about based on Western media, which we obviously tend to think is more credible than Arab media sources. Big newspapers versus blogs, etc. So how do you reach this kind of conclusion that 83% in one case and 88% in the other case, probability, if I'm understanding this correctly, that these attacks were carried out by opposition forces and not by the Syrian army?
Okay, so each one has its own a different set of evidence. For Ghouta, I think the strongest points are one, the direction in which the rockets landed. So they landed at the ground pointing north, and initially everyone said, "Oh, look! If you go on the map north, you get a Syrian army base. That's the source." That was people were very happy with that for a while. Every time I say Syria, Siri asks me what I want. Go away.
As long as we don't have rocket attacks on Alexa, I think you're going to be okay.
Okay. Alaska, maybe. So
Alexandria.
I want to press.
Okay. Yeah. So we have the rockets pointing north, and initially everyone was very happy with that. Only after a month or so, it was becoming very clear these are very short-range rockets. So if you take the range, which is 2 kilometers north, and you land in a field that is under opposition control. So that's one very strong piece of evidence that tilts very strong to that hypothesis. Another one is a bunch of videos that leaked also around a month after the attack, basically showing opposition fighters on the night of the attack in the location that matches the suspected launch location, wearing gas masks, launching the same types of rockets as landed over there. So that's I always like to refer to this video, because every time you when people have a disagreement and they sure the facts support their case, they will say, even if you see a video of I don't know, this guy murdering the victim, you would not believe.
You
right?
wouldn't believe it, even if it's
yeah. And this is exactly what we have here. We actually have videos of the attack, and it didn't convince everyone. They just said, yeah, it's fake. That's it, without actually examining.
We live in an era. We have now deep fake. Okay, where you can literally make it seem pretty realistically that a well-known person is saying something in their own voice, and it's completely fabricated online. We had, I don't know if you happen to catch it. We won't hold it against you if you didn't. Last week we had a former FBI agent, and we kind of also got into this whole discussion. And we've done this a few times on the show because it's something we're both pretty concerned with, obsessed with. How do you even have smart public debate? How do you have smart decision making by those in our societies and governments who are supposed to have these responsibilities in an area where everyone's loading information online? Some of it is fake, some of it is purposefully fake. And I mean, is this like your grandiose attempt to try to curb that? I mean, what do we do with this? Because what is it? We both went to a Tom Friedman lecture last year, I believe it was, and he said a sentence that has stuck with me, in that in this kind of day and age of where information is completely open, everyone can post wherever they want on the internet, social media, etc. Democracies are ungovernable. So he said something to the extent of bad dictatorships are going to have an even harder time. Good dictatorships, smart autocrats are going to succeed and thrive in this kind of environment, and democracies are ungovernable. I mean, is this kind of maybe your chess move to get ahead of that? Is that what you're trying to do here?
Yeah. So first, to clarify, the problem is that a lot of information is faked, and specifically in the case of these videos, that was what we examined: is what is the probability that these could be faked in the way they were, and it didn't seem very likely. Of course, nothing is 100%, but it's definitely something that tilts the balance of probabilities to that side. In terms of how you deal this is a big problem. I mean, the whole idea of democracy as we in the West look at it is that you try to put a lot of responsibility on the electorate, on the people to make decisions, and that depends on them actually having reliable information, and that seems to be undermined heavily lately. I must say it's not like 30 years ago it was much better. It was like just more homogeneous.
So everyone was saying this.
Yeah, so people were all fed from the same information sources, and they all believed the same true things and the same false things. But now it's more polarized. But definitely, this is something that needs we need to think heavily.
Is it still the official position of the IDF and of Israel that the Syrian regime carried out those attacks?
Oh, definitely, yeah. That as far as as they're concerned, I'm a conspiracy theorist. This is, by the way, it's funny because the conspiracy is to say that the government is conspiring against its people, right? So this is actually the conspiracy is to say that the army is going and attacking its own people, but never mind. So so this is everyone in the in intelligence and government will tell you, yeah, of course, we know, we have evidence. So none of that was presented, but
do you meet with them? Do you meet with Israeli intelligence officials? think tanks?
Not
Are they
really,
curious
no.
what you have to say?
So, well, sometimes I do give lectures to all kinds of people that may be related to those, not directly. In general, I think we're still a long way of convincing people that this is an effective method. I think it's going to be easier because we're starting to accumulate successes. So a lot of cases where we were initially on the minority have later become the consensus, and we never failed so far. So I think as we continue to gather successes, it's going to be easier. But so far, it's a big problem because everyone, I've never met one person who is actually has reasonable opinions on a lot of different subjects. All of us believe some weird stuff, and when they come to us and they see one thing that is directly contradicts what they already believe, they must it's much easier for them to just dismiss the whole method than to actually say, okay, let's examine what they say here, and do I have a good reason to believe that?
Well, that's humanity, right? I mean, we like to discount the fact that human beings are nuanced creatures and complex individuals with different feelings and different realities, and we like putting people in a box. You know, this person's this.
Is it the box with the red balls or the blue balls?
The blue ones, but obviously the blue ones. But look, you know, that's how it is. I mean, it's like you did one thing bad in your life that you know, in a lapse of judgment. So now that gets out on social media, and you're categorized as this, and then you're canceled.
Let's take it to a more you know, commonplace occurrence here in our Israeli reality. How many Israelis do you see refuse to watch CNN, which is considered like the global standard of news? Okay, and I'd be glad to hear your opinion. What is the best news source, actually?
I've yet to find one consistently reliable news source.
But you know, we always think
nothing.
We always think New York Times, CNN, BBC, and how many Israelis do you say, well, they get the Israel story wrong, so they must be garbage on everything, right? And that's kind of, you know, that we have a tendency, and that's exactly how it plays out here. So I mean, yeah, there's not one single news source that you've seen that gets it more.
Yeah, the main weakness of New York Times and BBC and the likes is that they are very they don't want to rock the boat. So they will almost always go with their governments when it comes to foreign relations stuff. Okay, so these sources, they all went all in behind the Syria attacks.
Mm-hmm.
They published all kinds of details analysis of how they proved it was the army, and very biased, very unreliable work there.
Is this why people tend to then gravitate towards the news sources that just confirm what they want to think? I mean,
I think I
don't
think you need a reason for that. No. Just you always want to hear what you already believe. So it doesn't matter how what are the problems with others.
I would love to see that, like, Rootclaim get a weekly corner on like some major news show, and you know, be tasked with whatever's happening on the world stage.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, I mean, we gotta get.
Yeah, so that's the issue. That's to do that, this news source would have to first admit that they've been terribly wrong on a few things in the past. So that could be, for every news source, it will be something else, but that's something they'll have to do first, and that's going to be very costly for them. What we are trying to do to try to steer the, how do you say steer the what?
Rock the boat?
No. Steer the ship, yeah.
Yeah,
okay. Is to, so we're offering $100,000 challenge to people who think our analysis are wrong and are willing to bet against us $100,000 on a debate, on a judge debate on that.
Has anyone taken up on that?
Yeah, so we started offering it for Syria maybe 2 years ago. All the people who are very confident, these people are crazy, it's obvious, we have all the evidence, none of them are willing to even consider it. We did the same for vitamin D like a month ago. So we're claiming vitamin D is currently the most effective therapeutic we have. We're willing to bet on that and see, like, in 18 months if the consensus moves in our direction or not. Again, no one willing. Actually, I saw someone interested. I need to check how serious he is. But yeah, we sometimes get people who say, "Yeah, I want to bet," but then when you actually go into the details, they actually realize they think exactly like you, and they're just trying to find some way to game the bet.
Has there been anything that you've been really surprised by, like the finding?
Yeah. So
that's not what I thought.
yeah. So there's the Israeli murder case of the Irada, which was it's very famous for Israelis. There's also a Netflix movie on it called The Shadow of Truth.
For non-Israeli listeners, do you want to just
yeah, sure. So probably the most famous Israeli murder case, a girl murdered inside the bathroom toilets of her school. Just found her dead inside the stabbed with a knife, and just no motive. No one knows how it happened. It's the weirdest thing. And within a month, they latched on the janitor, got him to confess, and he's, to this day, that's already what?
It was probably 10 years ago.
More. 14 years. He's in jail. And yeah, and this case is he's very clearly. So I when we started looking at it, I was sure I had a lot of trust in judicial system. It was examined 3 times by judges, always reaching the same conclusion. So I think all of us were expecting this would be the result, but he's he's obviously not the murderer. There's like,
based on what?
So there's a bunch of stuff there. So some of the things is that all the evidence that supposedly convicts him, it's very weak when you go into it and you examine what it is actually behind it. Another thing is that confessions are very weak statistically. So if you look at the statistics of confessions, especially in these kind of cases, it's almost meaningless. So you can get almost anyone in this situation to confess. So basically doesn't really differentiate between guilty and innocent people. There's something very interesting about which information. So he was trying very hard to get the investigators to believe he's guilty.
Why?
So he,
you know why?
Okay, so they managed, so it was a very complex issue, but they eventually got him to believe indirectly that if he confesses, he will get a much lighter sentence. So this is something that is not allowed in Israel to do, but it doesn't matter. But because eventually he believed it. It doesn't matter how exactly they did it and whether they actually broke any law or not. They eventually reached the situation where that's what he believes, obviously. So the interesting thing is he tried to answer a lot of questions about how the murder happened. And when you look at what answers he gave, so he gave a lot of correct answers and a lot of incorrect answers. In the trial, they took all the correct answers and showed, hey, he said 8 correct things about the murder. Wow, there's no way someone could hit 8 times. But when you actually look at what he's got right and what he got wrong, all the right stuff is like guesses that are like 1 and 2. Okay, stuff like which stall did it happen?
Yeah, there's like a left and right one.
Yeah, so like stuff like that. So all the guesses which could be easily guessed, he got them. Not all of them. Some of them he got wrong. Some of them he got wrong, and then they said, "Are you sure?" And then he got them right. So all the easy stuff, correctly, all the stuff he got was easy guesses. None of the hard guesses he managed to get right, even though they're not. It's not like they're more incriminating or putting him in a worse light in terms of a person than the other stuff. So when you look at all the distribution of evidence, not only the hits, but also the misses, this is a clear someone trying to guess distribution and not the guilty person trying to somehow hide for some reason some of the evidence.
Because you think he thought he would get a lighter sentence for cooperating. Is that what?
Yes, yes.
Do you have any idea who did it? I mean, to this day, I'm not
yeah. So there are two alternative hypotheses that are going around. One is that the friends of Ta'ir, or not friends, schoolmates of Ta'ir murdered her. So all kinds could be around drugs or jealousy, whatever. This basically has this very low probability. There's nothing to support it. It's very low in the prior. I mean, it's not the kind of murder that usually happens, and young people are very bad at keeping secrets for long. So that's the second hypothesis. The third hypothesis is a person called Ola, or AK sometimes. This is a girl who used to learn at that study at that school 4 years earlier, and she has some serious psychiatric problems, which drive her to want to play with blood and the insides of people, stuff like that. And
good times.
Someone psychotic.
Yeah, I don't think psychotic is the correct word, but yeah, she has some psychiatric problems, and her boyfriend at the time, after many years later, says she confessed to him at the night of the murder and gave him details, and he saw the blood on her clothes.
So
and
you put all this into Rootclaim, and it said confirmed it is not probable that it was the janitor.
Yes.
Wow. On a lighter note, on a much lighter note.
On a much lighter note,
you looked into Donald Trump's hair.
Yeah.
I gotta hear this one.
Actually, that was a long time ago, so I don't really remember all the details. But basically, yeah. So for a while, it was common to say that he has a wig. It was like some of the jokes that people like to.
I'm pulling it up here. Yeah.
Yeah. So people like to say about him that he has a wig.
I always thought it was a bad comb over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, comb over is another thing that people said, but basically,
really bad comb over. Before you get to that,
sorry.
I said, you know who has a really bad comb over? And
Bibi?
Yeah, Bibi.
He actually has a good one, I think. But
well, yeah, I mean,
it looks good. I think.
Premise that most comb overs, in general, it's a bad idea.
No
don't comb over.
Oh yeah, it's as far as comb overs go. I think he's pulling it off.
It's surprising actually that there aren't any leaked photos of him like with his hair.
Yeah.
In like all over. Like
Yeah.
Trump had a bunch of photos like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Not Trump.
So you guys reached the conclusion, since you're 60% likely.
Yeah.
That it's a result of a flap surgery. What is a flap surgery?
So that's the surgery where you take you cut hair from here and you like rotate it and put it here.
Sounds
okay.
awful.
So you take like a flap of skin and put it here.
Just wear just go.
Dude, I could totally see him doing that.
Yeah. So I think that the main evidence to support it is that he often likes to do this. You see, that's my real hair, and he lets people pull it. Okay. So that's something that shows that this area is okay. By the way, there's one thing that's not covered in this analysis is the possibility of multiple treatments.
Oh.
But yeah, so it's common that it's some of them, but toupee is
it's not
very very unlikely. Yeah, there's like we should have seen something to support that so far, and
yeah, you can clearly see it's connected to his head.
Yeah.
Okay, so you claim, and this has not up on the website yet. You told me in the pre-show conversation that you're redoing the website in a couple of days here.
Yes.
You think you know the source of COVID-19?
Yeah. So to be accurate, it's not. We know. So a lot of people are doing research on that. A lot of people are publishing their theories and hypotheses on what happened, and they give the evidence to support it. What we do is we weigh the different hypotheses against the evidences and see who has the best case and who is best supported by the evidence. So again, we were going into it expecting to reach the mainstream conclusion. We said, okay, we have too many confirmed conspiracies on our website. That wasn't expected when we started this.
What
so
are
we
the,
said, okay,
what are
let's
the main theories that are going around, just to put everyone here?
Yeah, so we said, okay, let's go and try to do something that's mainstream and important, and people are blaming this on biological weapons and lab leaks, and let's try to do something that.
And
Sorry.
Bats, right?
Yeah, that's. So I think the bat soup is no one really believes that. That's more of a urban legend. But there are basically three hypotheses. One is that this was a zoonotic source, meaning that this was a virus at some animal that crossed over to humans, and that's how we got it. And that's something that happens all the time. Most cases, it doesn't develop into a deadly pandemic, but we catch viruses from animals all the time. So that's something that,
like through food, through getting bitten. What are we talking about here?
So any contact could work. It could be just handling them. Could be in farms.
Okay.
And any close contact people have with animals or their excrements is a source for zoonotic transfer. Okay, so that's the one hypothesis. This is the one that is currently considered the mainstream, that every serious person believes. The second one would be a lab leak. So we had scientists experimenting with different viruses, building a new virus for whatever reason, and it got leaked out.
This is Wuhan level 4 biological laboratory.
Yes. So if we go for lab leak, the immediate culprit would be the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is in Wuhan. So you have you have a lab right next to the to the start of the pandemic. And the third would be something intentional. That is some agent wanted to cause this pandemic. They designed a virus and released it. Okay, so the conclusion, we didn't publish it yet, but going to publish it in a few days, seems quite clear.
Do we have a drum roll on the?
Let's go.
We need to get a drum roll here. Okay.
Let's get a drink first. Yeah.
All right. I need more.
So yeah. So far, it seems pretty strong that this is indeed a lab leak from Wuhan.
A leak.
Yes. So not intentional. This is. I mean, that is one of the obvious things. If it was intentional, you don't do it next to your lab, right?
Sure. So
it's unless you're someone else trying to implicate Wuhan. But if it's a virus coming from Wuhan labs, it would not be released intentionally in Wuhan. I think that's obvious. Okay, so this is mostly based on research done by someone named Yuri Degin. He also went into this trying to disprove the zoonotic, to confirm the zoonotic source. He looked, and he's a genetics expert, and looked into the genes, and we see a few interesting things there. But before that, I think actually it's important to realize that even before we look into the genetics, this is a pretty likely hypothesis of the lab leak, because let's look at two things. One is lab leaks happen. So a lot of pretty dangerous viruses, including the first SARS, have escaped labs multiple times, and there are probably even 2 wide-scale epidemics that were caused by lab leaks. So this is not something that doesn't happen. It's much less often than zoonotic pandemics, but it does happen. So we estimated around for each 20 zoonotic epidemics, you will have 1 lab leak epidemic. Okay, so that's where we started. We're not starting with 0.01. We're starting with something that's probably 5%, something that's possible. And then you have this pandemic starting at Wuhan, which is a pretty strong coincidence, because Wuhan is basically one of 2 labs that are developing new coronaviruses, doing what's called a gain of function. Gain of function is a research where you try to add new functions, new capabilities to a virus in order to predict what nature could bring to you in the future and be prepared for it. Okay, so that's the stuff they do there.
They weren't trying to weaponize it. They were trying to
Correctly
mess around with it to understand how it could evolve, and then how to adapt to future.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, yeah. So this is completely
some crazy stuff, biologically speaking.
Yeah. So this is completely benign research. There's no bad intentions here. The whole field is very controversial. So a lot of people are trying to shut it down exactly because this is something that could happen. And others say we need to be prepared to all new pathogens. So it's a controversy whether this kind of research should be happening or not. But there are basically only 2 labs who are doing gain of function of coronavirus, one in the US and one in Wuhan. Okay. And so just the fact, Wuhan is just one of maybe, I don't know, 100, 200 cities of similar size in the world. The fact that this starts there is already a pretty interesting coincidence that by itself is quite enough to overcome the 1 in 20 odds we started with. Okay. So even before we go to the genetics, this is like at least 50-50.
Yeah. It makes it very, very suspicious.
Yes.
And to anybody with you weigh it without even getting into anything else. It's like, okay, wait, wet market, bats, weird Chinese eating habits, and then it's like GS4, biohazard lab in Wuhan, like 200 meters away from the wet market. Yeah, that's kind of weird, right?
Right.
Like anybody.
Right. Although, do you remember we had one of our first guests was a public policy expert who has been focusing on global pandemics. Okay.
You're talking about David Manheim. He's a catastrophic risk.
Yes, catastrophic risk expert. And he mentioned on this question that there are a number of similar kinds of labs in major Chinese cities. So he didn't think it was indicative at all.
Yeah, but you need to focus on coronavirus gain of function research, not just any virology research. Okay, so this is the research that could generate a new coronavirus. So this is very specific, and there's not many places who actually do it.
Got it.
So we're starting with this being not too unlikely, and then there's a lot of evidence. 2 things are most important. One is this virus looks to be a chimera of rat virus, a bat virus, and pangolin virus. Okay. Both of which are viruses that we know China to be investigating, and these are creatures that are not very likely to meet up in nature and trade viruses.
No.
Okay, so that's one thing that's pretty suspicious. And the other thing is this gets a bit technical. It's something called a furin cleavage site. So this is a site. It's 12 nucleotides, so 12 genetic letters inside the virus that are designed in a way that a certain enzyme in the human body and body of other animals will cleave it, will cut it, and that will help the genetic material to enter the cell. Okay, so that's something that greatly increases its infectiousness of the virus, and this cleavage site appears in the genetic code in a way that looks inserted rather than mutated. Okay, so when you look at the area to the left and to the right of this cleavage site, this 12 nucleotides, you see that when you compare it to the most similar viruses, you see it was likely pushed, and the new gene was inserted inside rather than mutated over. So that's something that is more likely to happen in a lab than nature. It's not impossible, but it's more likely as a lab practice.
You're saying when a genetic, whatever that name of the scientist is,
evolutionary biologist.
Is that what it is?
Maybe
a geneticist, you mean?
A geneticist,
virologist,
would look at this. It seems to them, you're saying, I'm just trying to understand, that it looks more man-made than it does natural. That's what you're.
So this specific site looks like something that is edited. Overall, this doesn't seem like fully edited gene. It looks like something that was evolved in a lab, not something that was design in a lab,
Interesting.
except for this specific insert, which looks more like something that a human would insert. It's not 100%. It is something that could happen in nature, and in nature, of course, we have a lot of opportunities for these events to happen. So it's very hard to estimate the probabilities. But one thing that you can say is nature would be more likely to reach there by mutation than by insertion. Okay, so it's not something that you would say is like a 1 in a million evidence, but it is definitely something that is more of the choice that a lab would do than nature would do. And also, if you look at specifically the nucleotides they chose in order to code, these are rare nucleotides in nature and common for lab practices because they make it easier to identify the presence of this sequence. So these are the main pieces of evidence. So given that we already started with something that is, given it's in Wuhan, is pretty reasonable, and then we add to genetic a piece of evidence that are pretty unlikely under nature. That makes it the most likely hypothesis.
Did you give it a probability?
Yeah, not final. It's at over 70% now. Oh. But I would say it's probably going to be higher when we publish, and you need to also know that we tend to be very careful when you start to reach the high probabilities. So this is in order to we put a higher likelihood than actually is for us making mistakes in the process. Okay, so one of the most important things in our analysis is we actually program in the probability that we made a mistake in the modeling. And currently we give this a high probability than what this actually is, just to be on the safe side. So I would say 70% is a very conservative estimate.
Wow, I'm gonna pour myself another drink.
Okay,
so that kind of info, and we're gonna have some.
Wait a second.
To Wuhan.
So it confirmed what I already thought, and I I listened to a lot of different people that are talking about these things, and that was, I've heard that before. That not that it I've heard the probability that it was biologically engineered in terms of its evolution being much more likely than it would be naturally evolved. So this is not a shock to me. However, apart from the obvious, let's call them policy implications of this on China and the Chinese government having some sort of responsibility in the leak of a virus from one of its labs being confirmed, does it make a difference in terms of the therapeutic approach towards reducing
probably not too much. I mean, it's probably going to be helpful to see what exactly they did there, what would the viruses this developed from, and maybe it will give some inspiration. But we already know the exact sequence of this virus, and we've seen it in people and millions of people, and we have a good idea how it operates. I don't think it will give some breakthroughs. I think the main implication is how humanity should approach this kind of gain of function research in the future.
Sure. Does this change how governments should approach the Chinese government and say, okay, guys, we know, or we think we know? That means, does this mean that the Chinese government or the people in that lab should have more insights into this strain and how to treat it, or does it not matter because you now have it mapped out and you can?
It's not my area of expertise, but I mean, as far as I understood, I can see how what they did to reach that virus would give more information over what we already know. If it was day one, definitely they could tell a lot, but at this point we have much more information than they could ever hope for in the lab. We have millions of people infected.
Got it. Yeah. Wow. I gotta ask, how do you how many people are there at Rootclaim, by the way? Looking at
it's 4. Yeah.
Are you sitting yourself on these problems and kind of doing research yourself, or?
Oh yeah.
You're sitting yourself and you're working on this.
Yes.
How do you guys choose what problems, what questions, what theories you're going to look at?
So we look for something that is interesting. A lot of people want to know it. It has an impact on the world, on decision making, on can save lives, anything like that, and it's not obvious. Okay, so when people say Hillary Clinton is trafficking children from pizza places, it's not something we go into investigate. But when there's like a serious controversy, we'll look into it.
Interesting stuff. It is one of those things where it's like you probably get a lot of people who are just asking you like, okay, you should look into this, or you should tell me what the answer is to that or the other, and you have to really carefully select what you're going to approach, because you're also trying to make an impact, and you're trying to avoid whatever your naysayers might try to say about what it is that you're doing. So you need to approach what you're doing from a very serious way. Just out of curiosity, I mean, maybe we should change gears for a second. How did you get into all these sorts of things? What made you interested in the things, how are you interested in the things that you invest in? How do you find or found companies? Where did you get your start in all of this? How did you become you?
One day his father and his mother.
Well, no, that's not literally that, we assume, but
right. So usually the way it happens is I will be working with one company on their own problems, and then some new solution, or new direction, new product possibility comes up, and if it's not a fit for that company, then I will maybe try to investigate in my labs and see if that's something that's worth doing. And if yes, then I will try to build something around it, get founders to do it, fund it, and help as much as I can. So usually the stuff I do is would usually involve in some way algorithms, AI. I do a lot of computer vision and optics, sensors.
What was your first company? The one that, or your first big success?
So fraud sciences, yeah, that was fraud prevention. So we were we were doing some like pretty advanced AI when no one was doing here in Israel to identify fraudsters online.
And you sold that to PayPal, correctly?
Yeah. So today it's PayPal Israel, and it's responsible for a lot of their security.
Unbelievable. And that kind of gave you what, the freedom, then the financial freedom to be able to follow things that interest you, right?
Yeah.
Was that kind of the goal though? Like if you go back to that time, and we're talking when this is like the late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah. So there was 2001 and sold 2008. Okay.
So when you were thinking about what you wanted to do when you were just starting out, was it that you wanted to be, to found a successful company and then to continue to build that company? Or was it, no, I want to become, an investor in many different things. I want to be all over the place. I want to be doing different,
good question.
Where's the mindset at that stage?
Where did you start out to be?
When I just started, yeah. I think I always had some affinity to trying to work on multiple problems at once. Yeah, but I was always much more interested in high impact stuff on humanity than just money.
Sure.
What are some of the other projects, investments, companies that you've had over the years that really stand out in your mind? Or am I asking you to tell me which of your children?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. So every company has something very interesting about it. If I try to choose stuff that's interesting to general audience, definitely Bzigo. That's the
one I couldn't pronounce.
Yeah, it's like Bzigo. So it's an iron dome for mosquitoes. So that's so that's a very cool project. So basically, it's a computer vision system. It's a home system that constantly monitors your house and identifies when mosquitoes enter. You get a notification in your smartphone. You have a mosquito in your room. You go there, and then the mosquito is marked with the laser marker, and you can just go in
Shit.
and take it out. So
Do you have to do it yourself, or is there like a?
so version 1 is yeah, you do it yourself. Most of the problem is knowing you have a mosquito and where it is.
Sure.
Their strategy, unlike flies, is that they try to be stealth and they're not too hard to kill. Flies are very obvious, but they're hard to kill.
Right.
So mosquitoes, basically, if you have an electric zapper or just a pillow, you'll get them 95% of the time. If you know where they are, you'll get them.
Yeah, pretty slow.
They always come for me. They always.
Was version 2 like the laser, like was like a laser
Okay.
ray? And
So the version 2 is to take them
moving.
out. Version 2 is to take them out, and that's tough because you need to be safe. Anything that could kill a mosquito remotely could probably injure a person.
Oh.
Yeah, you want it to be like, you know, we tried to get the mosquito, but we killed the cat instead.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Yeah. Or put the house on fire, right? So that's
what's that Confucian saying about killing mosquitoes and realizing there's better ways to do things, right? There's some kind of something at least attributed to Confucius.
Something with the testicles, I think. If you have a mosquito on your testicles or something, I don't remember the exact thing.
You realize there are gentler ways to take care of your.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
is this a functional product that I can buy?
No, you can pre-order it. It's we already have a working prototype in the lab. We already have the boxing and everything of how it will look. It's now about the mass production, and yeah, we got funding for it, and it's gonna be in the market. It's gonna be
I'm gonna ask
a great product.
Awesome.
But I'm gonna ask a stupid question.
Okay.
I hate mosquitoes. Like anyone who knows me, anyone who's spent time with me, they always come to me first. I think it's something maybe because I sweat a lot or because it's in my blood type. I don't know what. But it seems like, and you'll tell me why I'm wrong in a second, but it seems like not the world's biggest problem to solve. Or is it places you're talking about that have malaria and it's a huge problem?
It's a major problem. You don't live with that's like every bug in the house. I have to spend ridiculous amounts of time.
I mean, I got screamed
chasing,
but when we get the odd mosquito, like it drives me crazy.
Yeah. So going back to So going back, since the West is the real world, then it's only a nuisance problem.
Exactly.
But in the the less important world, you got 1 million people a year dying from it. So
1 million people a year die from
malaria is a real disease.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
West Nile.
No, you're right. I've never spent considerable amounts of time in places where people are dying from mosquitoes.
Spent some time in sub-Saharan Africa with.
I don't think I will.
Wow. Yeah. So but version 2 is about taking them out, and it's tough because you need to be safe. And I'll leave it to you to think how we're going to do it. We have a very neat solution for that.
I have an idea. Very small ninjas.
You're not too far, actually.
Tiny bats that fly around the house and eat them. Is it a radar system? Is it echolocation? How does it work?
It's a computer vision. So it's a camera. It's infrared lighting, so it works at night. And of course, mosquitoes are too small to detect by shape, but to track their movement patterns. So
interesting. That's really interesting. Actually, I was Shabbat lunch yesterday with a friend of mine who's a physicist who works with optics and lasers and all these things. And I happened to mention you're going to be on the show. And he said, oh, I worked with him, or we were trying to see how we could collaborate. And I think he was talking either about the mosquito project or some kind of glasses type project that you were also.
Is this the guy who's reconstructing light that is being reflected from a wall?
I have a feeling that's what he's into, but I've never really delved into. But yes, he deals with optics and these kind of things.
Uri, maybe his name?
Eitan Ronen is his name. He's a physicist at a startup in Rehovot.
I'm very bad with names. So
no, okay.
This could be someone that I've maybe worked with for a month. I would not remember.
Maybe you tried to forget him.
No. It's crazy. It's like sometimes I sit with a person for an hour and a half, and I meet him the day after, and nothing.
You guys were trying to explore. I think he's working on some kind of glasses, wearable tech.
Oh yeah. Of course. No, they do the. They do the microscopes, right?
What's that company called?
It's Lumos, right?
Yes, Lumos. That's what his company is.
Make sure I got the correct.
It's one of those small world type, stories.
We're in Israel.
We're in Israel. It's a small world.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course. Okay, no, these are the waveguides. Yeah, so they do displays for augmented reality. Yeah, no. Like I said, it's going to be embarrassing. Yeah, I've met this guy multiple times, and we spent.
No, I think he'll be okay.
All right, let's ask.
Although he does listen to the show.
I want to ask Saar a bizarre question. You're a big ideas guy, and you've got the ability to see things through. What is our world? Assuming we're all here and everything works out okay, what does our reality look like in 2050?
Oh wow, 50.
Ideally, well, maybe not so far. Maybe 10 years from now. Are we living in? Is AI now a much more?
You just like jump for the jugular question.
Well, no, it's an important thing
question.
to say.
Of course it is.
Look, here's the thing that I always go to. Okay, there are, and this is especially something I find in Israel, and it could just be that because I'm in Israel that I find it mostly here, and it could be something that when you're talking about technologies and innovation, it happens anywhere. You find that, and I'll say to Saar, like I before COVID, I work in tourism, so I would bring high-level delegations of people from the United States, and we would sit down with innovators or government ministers or things like that and talk about Israel's impact on the world and technology and how things are going to be. And it's like, how many times I heard that by 2020, and we're going back, like we would be in 2015, by 2020, everybody will be driving an autonomous vehicle. The excitement seems to be that it's right around the corner and we're going to be there, and then it's like I'm always like the skeptic, like, no, that doesn't seem like it's realistic to believe that in 2 years' time we're all going to be in a self-driving car. However, it does seem that we're getting to a point where we're reaching kind of the horizon. Like there are going to be more and more technologies that are deeply impacting our day-to-day lives, not just the life or technologies of science or industry, but you and me, regular people that sit here at home. AI is something that more and more is talked about positively and negatively, but it's becoming more something that the average person talks about. Are we close to seeing like I don't know what the word is.
Let's leave it open ended. I mean, and you come to it now, or maybe if you want to think about it for a second, how are our lives, if you have a guess, practically going to change in 10 or 20 years? I don't know if you've had thoughts about it.
I have a lot of thoughts about it. It's very hard to predict. These are very chaotic processes. There's basically a lot of events that, if they happen, they introduce a lot of change, and if they don't happen, we continue to see the same slower than expected progress, I think. So in terms of AI, the big question is whether you get to a point where you can actually solve problems and do advanced engineering with AI. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's called a singularity, but
that was the word that I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's not be too caught up on the exact term, but I think the point where you can use AI to solve complex problems and do engineering is a point where you have a very rapid change in innovation. Doesn't seem like we're getting there in 10 to 20 years.
You think longer or shorter?
40, 50 sounds right. But it could be any number.
We were watching. We just watched the Back to the Future trilogy with our kids. My oldest.
Awesome.
I have an 11, a 9, and a 5-year-old, and for the past 3 weeks, every Thursday night we do a movie night. So we did Back to the Future, and I love the one where, I mean, you remember we were. How old are you, by the way?
When it came out?
No. How old are you now?
Today, 45.
45. Okay, so you're a little older than us. I'm 38. You're 36. So, but I remember watching Back to the Future as a kid in the 90s, and it takes place in 2020. and then there's flying cars.
2015.
2015.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's like, you compare where people thought we were going to be with flying cars in 2015, and it's like, no, we're still trying to convince people that the moon landing was real.
Yeah, but if you look at it, they completely underestimated anything that's related to computers.
That's
okay,
true.
so like the graphics they have there were ridiculous. At 85, they thought they're like showing like amazing graphics, but they were like ridiculous in today's terms. The video conference was pretty lousy. The displays, everything everything was underestimated when it comes to computers and electronics. But when it comes to mechanics,
right,
they're way off. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anyone? I'm actually really curious. Is there anyone that you know of in this kind of genius high tech world that you live in working on time travel? Is that a thing that
time travel? No, never heard anyone looking into it even as a joke. No.
Could it ever be possible? I say
that's a question for a physicist.
Yeah.
I've never met a physicist who thinks we're anywhere close to understanding how this works. They're still trying to debate if it's possible. So
my understanding from listening to a lot of physicists talk on different podcasts is that, or YouTube videos, it's theoretically possible. There's mathematics that can, prove that it would be possible, but you would need, if you were to build a time machine, you would, in order to actually move something of infinitesimal weight, like, a milligram of something, you would need to use the entire energy output of Earth. Essentially, and it would just be so super inefficient that
maybe you could zap the mosquitos forward in time.
No, we're not there. But
1 minute in the past.
You are working on some stuff that does seem like it's right out of sci-fi. Your brain preservation.
Yeah, right.
Fascinating to me.
Nice
Absolutely fascinating to me. Although I have to say, when you go to the website and you look at the pictures, it's a little disturbing. So to the uninitiated, pig's brains.
I'm going to the website right now.
Tell us about it.
Yeah.
So first of all, this is only something I funded. I have no background in this area. I don't understand the processes well enough. So this was an idea by a researcher from Harvard called Ken Hayworth. This was probably 12 years ago, I think. And he came up with the idea. His job is to slice brain, so making very thin slices of brain material, and then looking at it with an electronic microscope, and then actually tracing neurons through the slice. So it's that's what he does. And then when he saw that he's getting the level of detail that's basically enough to understand everything about how these neurons work, he realized that if we actually manage to scan a whole brain and keep all the data, then that would be enough sometime in the future, when processing power reaches that capability, to actually simulate the whole brain. And based on everything we know so far and how the brain works, that would mean brain uploading. That would mean that you will be the same person you are, just running on silicon instead of
what do you mean? So you could take your brain as if it were a disk drive and upload it to anything else? Is that what you're?
Yeah. So basically, he said, okay, so he's doing scans, and he sees in the scans, he sees very low level of detail of how the synapses and neurons and axons, everything connect, and what is the strength of the connections, everything. And he hypothesizes that this information is enough to completely simulate the brain if you transfer all the information to a computer. There's no computer anywhere close to being able to do the simulation, but if you actually know all the connections and their strength and everything at the state, and then you recreate it on a computer, that computer will have the exact same experience that the brain has. For all purposes, it would be you. You will not be able to differentiate if that is.
Is it you frozen in time at that specific
time?
No.
We run the simulation and it works. I mean, it's you just need to connect the senses to alternative.
Dan, are you trying to say, like, in terms of cognition, like you Dan Pfefferman, your body, what we we call the soul, okay, you would feel you, but you would, instead of having this body, you would be essentially in a machine in whatever form would take? Or are you saying, no, this is just the preservation of your memories, and if you ask it or give it input, do this or do that, or tell me this or tell me that, it would respond as if it were you with all of the
So
input.
if you scan the information and save it to a hard disk, that is a preservation of the person.
Mm-hmm.
If you take all this information and start to run a simulation of neurons, exactly how neurons interact and how they adapt and everything, and you run it in a computer, and then you connect it to the outside world, you give it cameras, you give it microphones, you give it a simulation of all the senses, then the subjective experience is indiscernible. That's me. There's nothing,
now,
as far as we know today, there's nothing that could differentiate
this is
the two experiences.
They're already
no,
running?
no. So he said that's something that's theoretically possible. If that's theoretically possible in the future, if we can take someone who's has some terminal disease today, and he's going to die in a few months, and we actually, instead of letting him die, we are able to freeze his brain in a way that preserves all this information. And then 50 years in the future, we have the technology to scan this brain and upload it and run it. Then that person is basically is given some alternative to dying, right? So
it's essentially cryogenics, except without hoping to preserve the entirety of the human body to one day, many generations in the future, bring it back to life.
Right. So most people would prefer to think of preserving their whole body and being able to revive it as is, which may be rational or not, I don't know. But that's what most people want to do. The problem is we don't have so far any method of doing that. So what Ken offered is to make a challenge to get a group to be able to just preserve the brain, even if it's not in a reversible state. There's no way to reverse it, but there's a way to, all the information is preserved. So we said we should have a challenge to get people to show that they can preserve a mammalian brain, a pig brain, and give them some money for that. And I just happened to it in some forum, and they said, okay, that makes sense. Let's fund this. So we gave them $100,000 for the prize, and the prize was won like 5 years ago. So a group was able to fully preserve a pig brain, and they have a process that, for all purposes, can preserve a person's full brain information.
Has it been done
on people? No. So there's a company called Nectome that is working on this to bringing this to humans. They are supposed to get there in a few months. The first people will be people that are not intended to be revived ever. So these are people that are just intended to be, so they'll get some compensation beforehand for participating, and
basically they're donating their body to science, essentially.
Yeah, so it's the same as donating to science. Yeah,
then they don't,
exactly. So they will undergo the procedure, and then we will verify that all the information is indeed preserved, that the level of details that we think is sufficient. And once that is proven, then you can start offering it to terminal patients. Yes.
Bizarre question: Would you ever do this yourself?
So if it's the only option left, I think it makes sense. Why not? I mean, I think it's the best fallback we have.
It definitely approaches this fine line between where the physical approaches the metaphysical, where science is like, okay, what's technically possible, and then it's like, well, what is the nature of what makes you? What is the source of life? What is the soul?
Right.
I'd be super curious. I'd be super curious to get, I don't know how much you care or don't care, or even curious about this, but I'd be curious to get like forward-thinking rabbis, religious mind, maybe from all religions involved in this, to debate this question of where does the
so if this
lines fall?
Yeah, so if this happens, if this actually gets to the point that puts a lot of religious and spiritual ideas in a very weird place, because basically the soul is supposed to be gone somewhere, but hang on, we can bring it back in 50 years. So
but, I mean,
you need to settle the question in that case. Yeah,
I didn't quite understand. So is it is it the soul? Is it like this person could, or the person's brain continues living in some form like we see in sci-fi movies? Or is this at the point that that person's brain stopped working? This is where everything that was
a facsimile of what it was.
Yeah, so it's very similar to going what's it called when you go into surgery?
Anesthesia.
Anesthesia, yeah. So it's very similar. So basically, you lose consciousness for that period, and when your brain activity ceases, and when they bring you back, you're basically at the same point you were. It was stopped. So it's the same idea. You stop brain activity, you preserve all the information, you just do it for years instead of hours.
Wow. Crazy. It's totally a black box too. It's like you don't know where do you go during that time when you're not there.
Where do you go when you're under anesthesia?
Exactly. Same sort of thing.
You don't go anywhere. You just there's just no activity at that point.
Which if we want to get philosophical about it, is kind of the answer, or not the answer, but it figures into the answer of your question, which is if you're approaching it from a let's say a traditionalist religious point of view, that the body has a soul, and then when we die the soul goes somewhere. If you were approaching it from a completely I'm not sure that the word atheist is the right word, but like a without that sort of a mindset, it's that you do not have a soul. You exist only in your brain. And if the brain is being frozen and being brought back to life, thus the feeling of consciousness would also be brought back to life.
Huh. That's interesting.
And there you would be. And it has amazing implications. I mean, I'm just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of long distance space travel. If you can freeze somebody here on Earth, put them into space, you have to take, let's say it's, I don't know, 2 million years to travel from here at the fastest propulsion speed we have today to the nearest star system. You could, theoretically speaking, freeze yourself. Your body would no longer be necessary, and then when you get to the other side, you are in some sort of a robot or something,
a different
like
body or whatever.
But you're still you, and very.
Yeah, I never found the whole space exploration stuff too appealing, but yeah, if that's your thing.
Wow.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, why is it appealing? I don't know.
No, I'm not critical of the fact that you don't find it interesting.
No, I mean,
it's so interesting. Of the things that one becomes interested in, that's definitely in the tool.
Yeah, I mean, we have like areas in our own planet that we even are not even close to exploring or building colonies or anything. So actually, no one is interested in that. So why are people interested in doing it on Mars? I must say, it's never got the point.
I agree with you. I think that some people would say that there's just, if you look around the world, there seems to be a good argument to be made as to why we should work to try to get ourselves off this planet.
It sounds like a 1 million times more expensive solution than the next best solution.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, that's interesting. From an investment perspective, when you're looking at projects to invest in, let's say somebody came at you with a space sort of a thing, like some sort of initiative about long-term space travel, something way out of the box. Would you look at that? You just said you're not interested in it personally. Would you look at it and say, does this make good financial sense, or are you just saying like, you know what, I don't believe in that, so it's not of importance to me, and therefore I'm not?
Yeah, so I would want to see both financial sense and a positive impact. So I don't see too much positive impact in space travel.
Yeah.
What you mentioned there's things on Earth that we haven't fully explored yet. So what does pique your interest?
Oh, it doesn't interest me. I'm just saying that we have lots of places that we could explore and colonize, and obviously no one is interested in that. It seems like the only reason people are interested in colonizing other planets is just because it has
it's the unknown.
It's like sci-fi. It's something that they read about when they're kids, but I just don't see how it is interesting. I mean, it's cute to send probes and have them send over information and explore, but like getting people to live there, like why there and not 4,000 meters below sea level? Why is that more interesting?
What we could do at sea, building sea colonies.
Yeah, I mean,
speaking of the moon and space, you have a company called Moon Active.
It's not mine. I was just the first investor there. Yeah.
Okay, you're the first investor in a company called Moon Active. Does it have anything to do with the moon, or what?
No, that's just a mobile games company.
Okay.
Nothing as sci-fi as the other stuff.
Well, what are some of the other?
So if you like more advanced, so Deep Optics is a good company to discuss. So what they're doing, a lens that can change its optical power, its focal length, with no moving parts. Okay, so so I think the most interesting application they have is building glasses that can be adaptable for
different distances,
for distance and for reading and everything based on your needs. And that's something you don't know about, but when you get to 45, every person
7 years from now.
yeah, every person starts to lose the flexibility of the inner lens of the eye, and that means they can the minimum distance they can focus and goes further and further away. Okay, so at some point you can no longer look at you can't read, you can't look at your smartphone. So that's when you start needing reading glasses. Yeah, so the idea is you have just one glasses, and that could give you the ability to look at different distances. Basically, it's recovering this flexibility that you had when you were young. Yeah.
This might have been what you were talking about with my friend, because I think these are the kind of things he deals with.
No, I think I was talking to him about an eye tracking company.
Okay.
Sensor that looks at the direction.
I'll have to ask him after this.
Okay. Yeah.
What's the next kind of human challenge that's popping up on your head now that you're starting to want to look at, that you want to veer in, whether to invest in something or to start your own company?
Yeah, so definitely main focus now is trying to help with the pandemic, getting this clinical trial off the ground. It's very hard for one person to do. Other things, so the stuff I learned from this experiment is it definitely seems to translate to other areas. So the problem of a lot of solutions to diseases already being out there, you just need to have a good data science approach to be able to connect different research and use common sense of advanced biology of what could work and what couldn't work to make leaps that are much faster than the current process. Is definitely something that could be interesting to look at for other diseases. And I'm also looking more general. Besides the brain preservation project, I'm looking at longevity in general to see what kind of options we have there. So it seems to be
what's interesting you as far as longevity?
I'm not at this point. I'm still trying to be convinced that this is something that's solvable in the near term. So the question is whether aging is something that is programmed, something that is evolutionary selected for, or something that is a compromise between, the candle that burns brightest burns fastest. So it's a design that we need to get the bodies more effective in reproducing, and then once we're done, we have a lot of wear and tear that cannot be fixed. So if it's the first, then it's reasonable that we can solve longevity in our lifetimes. If it's the second, it's going to be a much tougher problem. So yeah, so I'm trying to study that now. That's just starting. Nothing interesting to.
Is this personal interest in longevity in these kind of questions? Do you have personal dietary or exercise habits different than, let's say, other people? Does that kind of thing play into it? Are you eating differently? Are you exercising?
I don't think I think I'm doing what everyone is recognizing as efficient, which is doing high intensity exercises. So, short bursts of high intensity. Nutrition, less sugar, less processed food, less flour.
You're not like going, vegan or paleo or any of these kind of trends.
No, I don't think. I think both of them are not not ideal. I think there's obviously a lot of um, good sources of nutrients in animal products. I don't like the way they're manufactured today on the moral level, so I try to focus on eating only stupid animals. So that's of big fish. So try and what else?
Do you guys see in? I mean, I eat meat, but it's one of those things where I think, like you said, my issue, and I just haven't found an affordable way to do it. But my issue is that I don't like the way, the animal, the whole process.
You feel bad.
I feel bad
for the sustainability of it, and
yeah, and I'd love to be able to afford, free range and humane and all that kind of stuff. I'm not at that place in my life where I think I can afford it. But I just saw in Nes Tziona, so we're in Rehovot.
Oh yeah,
Nes Tziona, they just a vegan restaurant just popped up, and it's going to be serving, or it is serving, chicken made from cells grown in a lab.
Yes. Yeah, so this is an Israeli startup that's manufacturing lab-grown chicken.
Is it yours?
Sorry?
Is it your startup?
No, no. But I registered for the restaurant. They didn't get back to me, so you can try to reserve a place there.
I'm curious too. Very curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So didn't get in so far. But yeah, so they opened like a restaurant that's next to their company and the lab, and you can test their foods and give them feedback and stuff like that. Yeah.
Do you think this is the future of meat?
Oh yeah, sure, of course.
You think so?
Yeah.
You're going to get to a point where it's scalable and affordable to the point where we don't have to slaughter animals and raise animals and slaughter animals anymore.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's a very inefficient process today. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that in 100 years from now, people will look back at us and they will say how primitive they were, that they were eating animals.
We are primitive.
How do they do that, and how could they not make it faster? I'll ask you one final question that I have, and we didn't bring this up, so without getting into politics too much, because it doesn't really matter. I've always noticed in Israel that the business community here, the innovation community, the high-tech ecosystem is so pragmatic and so solutions driven and so efficient at finding those solutions, and yet we live in a country that is so desperately inefficiently operated. How do you circle? How do you circle that square? I mean,
circle the square. Yeah.
How is it that in one country we have such a amazing drive towards innovation, and on the other hand, we seem to, when it comes to our ability to govern ourselves,
why is our governmental shoemaker walking barefoot? Why, right? And
is it a generational thing? Is it that people aren't incentivized to go into government?
And you're talking to someone whose sister sat in the Knesset and has written books on these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it should probably be interesting to hear her take too, as someone who tried. So definitely
we'll have to get her on the show.
Okay. So so definitely there's no incentive for top people to enter the system. Just there's no incentive, and even if they wanted, I mean, it's not that I've met people who wanted to make an impact in politics. They make one step and they immediately understand that and this is not their game. It's not about mental capabilities. It's about more about social capabilities, about building coalitions, about making compromises. That's the system. That's the system we operate in. I'm sure there are much better systems that can be imagined and built, but how do you get there? How do you change the current political system without disenfranchising people, without risking a collapse? So these are tough questions.
Well, you see from time to time people who are very successful in the startup world. Naftali Bennett and Nir Barkat are two examples of guys who did fairly well in the high-tech world as managers. I don't know exactly what they did. Erel Margalit tried, to be the Knesset. It's one of those things where we all say, yeah, we wish these kind of people, people like you, we wish, solutions, pragmatic driven people would step into politics. But the system is just not friendly to people like that. I don't know. you're new to the show, but the past few episodes we've been doing a lot of UAE related stuff
Mm.
because I went out there recently and I'm part of UAE Israel Business Council, and I was very pleasantly surprised to see. Obviously they don't have democracy or elections there; they have autocrats. But I was very, very pleasantly surprised to see that they have a mindset of getting the best and the brightest advisors and solutions and technologies and just, yep, do it, get it, bring it in, let's implement it. And it's kind of, I'm not saying I wish I wasn't living in a democracy, because I think the grass is always greener, or in our case the sand is always browner on the other side. But it does make you think about how we organize our societies and our governments when you see it done effectively and efficiently in a different way, especially with all of these um, problems that we were talking about at the beginning of the show with post-truth and fake news and all of these challenges that we have and polarization. To see a model of a country, and it's not the only one, of what we might call benevolent autocracies, um, that recognize technological solutions, the best, the fastest, the most pragmatic solutions, and just say, "Yep, implement it. We don't need to deal with the politics here. We don't need to deal with the interest groups." And it was just a very interesting experience to see that in action. For its pluses and its minuses.
Yeah, so I don't think, and I don't know if I would choose UAE as the best example, but definitely China is a country that's showing a lot of high efficiency in government.
Also, yeah,
the way they treated the COVID, ignoring the fact that they're responsible for it, but once it's out there, they did an amazing job.
It's no joke. They're back to, like, I have colleagues in China. They're back to going to conferences. No one wears a mask. It's like
normal life. Yeah,
they're done.
Yeah. So definitely, I think we need to be starting to look into beyond the democracy good, autocracy bad, and starting to think about what is the actual thing we're trying to solve, and that is to make governments that work for the people and represent them. It's obvious that the current model of democracies in the West is becoming less and less aligned with the interests of the people, and more about, on one hand, aligned with corporate interests and lobbies, and on the other hand, aligned with populist, stupid ideas. So it's definitely that the Western style democracy is becoming less efficient in representing the people and the real interests. And on the other hand, what we used to look at as autocracies like China are definitely constantly improving. I don't know if I could say that today the system of government is better than European democracies, but I think it will be there in 10 to 20 years.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and we talked about how my worldview was, when we talked about mosquitoes, was inherently Western centric, and malasot, what can we do? That's the world I grew up in. But you're right, and I think China is leading this charge. I think Russia is also trying to do it, but they're just not doing it as well. Of countries that are trying to challenge the American-led Western liberal democracy, market, capitalist economies, and provide other solutions to government and to how we run the world and how we run international systems. And it's kind of hard to say. I don't know how I feel about this. It's kind of hard to say, you know what? No, we have to stick with this model of government, because look, there's plenty of places right now in the world where what we knew in the West is becoming, like you said, Sal, it's becoming harder and harder to do. And we're seeing other models that are managing to succeed in this kind of chaotic environment. I don't know if it makes me optimistic or pessimistic, but it's certainly something we might want to explore on this show going down the road. And I think certainly something that a lot of political scientists and others are thinking about. Any last questions or any last points?
I just want to know where I can sign up for the brain freezing.
So look up Nectome.
It's incredible. You're into a lot of really great things. I wasn't familiar with your work before, I have to be honest, but it's really enlightened a lot of things for me to see it. And it's always great to, on the one hand, it's always great to encounter such optimism. On the other hand, it's always you discover a lot of obstacles that are up in making it difficult to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And what what we started talking about when it comes to COVID and therapeutics and how this didn't need to be the way that it is profoundly, on the one hand, I'm happy because I was early on the vitamin D train. On the other hand, it's just very, very tragic to me that because of economic models and economic reasons, it had to be the way that it is when many serious people advocated for alternative solutions, and so many of those voices, by the way, were banned or censored, or weren't given an opportunity to express themselves because of mainstream thought, and here we are.
Yeah, well, just to be clear, a lot of people who advocated for alternative solutions had no ground to stand on and were promoting wrong ideas. It's not that.
True.
It's very hard when in this unregulated market of nutrients to identify the people who actually know how to do research and know how to analyze large amount of data and come up with solutions with strong biological rationale behind them.
Yeah.
Remind us which zinc tablet we should be taking. And you have no connection to this company.
No connection.
No. This is the product. So Life Extension Enhanced Zinc Lozenge, and they're the only one that actually followed the research and made sure to build a lozenge that releases zinc ions and doesn't bind them immediately after they're released. And it's funny that there's like no other company in the world that did that. It's like,
and we've been taking zinc for years, but the ones that have that kind of strawberry or orange taste or whatever it is.
You're taking the wrong zinc, brother.
But you know what? We were on it. I got to have credit for my dad all these years, and this is since I was a kid. He's always been a huge proponent of supplements and vitamins and all these kinds of things, anything to keep the doctor away. And I got to say, and he's going to listen to this if he's not listening to it right now, on a lot of these things, he seemed to have been on the money. We always used to tease him, Dad, you're wasting so much money on vitamins and supplements. Hey, what did you talk about? Elderberry? Right?
Elderberry, yes.
Elderberry, echinacea. He's been talking about these for 30 years.
Echinacea seems to be effective against some common cold viruses, but probably this is not the right solution for this virus.
No, he's for common colds and
okay.
keeping your immune system up. And apparently the Bedouin here in the Middle East and Israel have been using elderberry in their whatever we call it, medicines for generations. It's a common thing. This has been fascinating. I knew a little bit about the company and I knew a little bit about what you were doing through some common friends, but I'm glad we got to do a deep dive into this. I'm glad we got to meet you. And anytime you have a story, a case, a new idea that you want to explore on the show, you are invited to come back, and we're happy to give you this platform.
Absolutely.
And we're glad someone like you is trying to take on one of the biggest challenges of our modern society, and that's putting everyone on kind of that same plane of decision making and rational analysis, something that's very sorely missing and very connected to our mission as Jewanced, of what we're kind of trying to do, play our tiny little part in society. So we're glad to see someone's doing a better job at it, and we wish you a lot of success.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to have this deep dive intelligence conversation that it's very hard to have in over most platforms. It's very good.
And may we all stay healthy. And
the amount of times you sneeze during this podcast and I have to mute you, I'm going to have to take some elderberry when I come out.
If you take a zinc lozenge now, you're probably going to be okay.
I'll be fine.
Done. We're getting zinc tomorrow.
But I told you I have the BS zinc. I have the orange flavored zinc. I got to go home and throw that in the toilet. I got to.
Where are you now? Where are you located now?
I'm in Rehovot.
Okay, if you're in Tel Aviv, I'll give you one. I have a stock.
I'll be there later this week.
Is this, by the
Awesome.
way, is that zinc available in pharmacies in Israel, or do I have to order?
No, you need to order it from abroad, but it gets here in 5 days. Not so bad.
Let's do it.
All right, I got to do it.
Let's get an order.
Make it happen.
So vitamin D and zinc. That's the big takeaways from this. Unbelievable. Saar Wilf, thank you so much for joining us. Founder of Rootclaim and of a whole list of very impressive companies. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your insights, and hope everyone has a great week and stay healthy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was great.
All right, man.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.